Chapter 7. Suddenly, with a feeling of shame, I remembered the animals. In the rush to follow Ezra and find Pa, I had forgotten all about them. I'd left them without food or water for how long had it been? 2 mornings? Yes, this was the second morning. I had broken Pa's first rule. Before I did anything else each day, I had to care for the animals. I remembered him explaining, if a man's going to keep animals to work for him and feed him, he's got an obligation to treat them right. A man who mistreats a poor dumb beast is no better than a beast himself. I could never face Pa if I left those animals to die of hunger and thirst. I jumped up and started putting on my boots. Ezra and Molly turned to stare at me. I have to go, I said, back home, to feed the animals. In the quiet of the little room, my outburst seemed very loud. I have to feed them. They depend on me. Ezra looked worried, and Molly began, Nathan, you can't go. I have to go, and I have an idea, I said. I can bring Job and Crabapple. That's our horse and our mule. I added for Ezra's sake, back with me. I'll ride Job and lead Crabby. I'll get back quicker, and that way Pa will have a way to get home if his leg doesn't... If he doesn't heal right, I finished quietly. Molly stared at me. Her eyes looked huge. I could tell Ezra was trying to decide what to do. If you draw me a map, I can find my way, I said. In the daylight, it won't take so long, and on horseback, I'll be back before dark tonight. Still, Ezra hesitated. I understood. You don't want me to go by myself, do you? Ezra shook his head. But we can't leave Pa alone again. The medicine is helping him, but Molly says it's almost gone. If you and Molly can find more of the white root and the right kind of leaves and watch over Pa, I'll be back by nightfall and everything will be fine. I can't think of any other way, Ezra. I can't leave those animals to die. Ezra nodded, and I followed him outside. In the soft dirt under a pine tree, he drew a picture. Pointing to the sky, he drew a star. The star off the tip of the dipper? I asked. That one that points north? He nodded. Next, he gestured all around us and drew an X on the map. The X was Ezra's house. Then he drew the sun in the sky with an arrow showing the path the sun would take as the day passed. He added the big river and the sheer cliffs we had passed, the softer rolling hills, and finally the valley where our cabin stood, surrounded by the forest. Carefully, he added the small streams that came into the big river, then other things that would help me find my way, like large boulders, groves of trees, and swampy areas. When he was satisfied with the drawing, he drew a path through it for me to follow. I knew there was not really a path, but that this would be the easiest way to travel. I looked carefully at Ezra, emphasized by pointing, shaking, or nodding his head, frowning or smiling, which twists and turns to take, and which to avoid. I studied the picture for a long time, memorizing every detail. Molly brought me a bowl of the turkey stew with some of the bluish biscuits floating in it. I was real hungry, but the sight of those blue biscuits stopped me. Then I noticed Ezra watching me anxiously, so I took a taste. It was good. I ate it all and got myself some more, and Ezra seemed pleased. Molly rolled up more biscuits in some wild grape leaves and put them in my pockets. Be careful, Nathan, she said, as I could tell she was trying hard not to cry. I whispered, You're not far away. You're not afraid to stay with Ezra, are you? She shook her head and said bravely, When you come back tonight, Papa will be much better. You'll see. She reached up to kiss and hug me hard, something she had not done for a long time. I'll be back before you know it, Molly, I said, hugging her back, and I'll tell Ms. Tiz and her piglets you say howdy. That made Molly laugh. Ezra, it seemed, had one last thing he wanted to show me. He got the odd-shaped piece of wood that I had noticed next to the door. Taking me back outside, he pointed to the forest, then got down on all fours and imitated a running animal. Next he stood up and continued pretending to run on 2 legs now, then himself again. He pointed once more into the forest, picked up the piece of wood, and with a peculiar twist of his arm, threw it in the direction he had pointed. It twirled, spinning over and over itself until it landed on the ground where Ezra had pointed. Then, while he pretended to be running again, Ezra's legs suddenly buckled under him, and he fell to the ground. He stood up somewhat sheepishly and looked at me. He lifted his eyebrows as if to say, "Do you see?" I nodded. The piece of wood was a weapon, just like I thought. It was probably used by the Shawnees. I thought that whatever or whoever Ezra threw it at would get tripped up and fall down for sure. But I didn't think the same thing would happen if I threw it. I ran to get the stick. "I want to learn how to do that," I said, "but I don't have time to practice with it now. What happened to Pa's gun? I know how to use that." For the second time, Ezra's face was transformed to hatred. This time, I knew what that look meant. "Weasel?" I asked. I couldn't believe it. My dream came back to me vividly. "Weasel has Pa's gun," I repeated stupidly. Ezra nodded. "Ezra, what happened? What does Weasel have to do with Pa? How did he get the gun?" We stared at each other. I wanted him to speak so bad. I almost felt like if I looked at him long enough, he would. Someday, I thought, I'll find out the whole story. But if I didn't leave right away, I'd never get back before nightfall. I put the club in my pack, more to ease Ezra's mind than anything else. Molly called a last goodbye. I took Ezra's hand awkwardly and shook it. Then I turned and began the longest journey of my life.